Guys, I've got a good bit of explaining to do. I've lied to all of you on a few occasions now. I haven't lied about the creatures, ghosts, or people, though, so don't worry about that, but I have lied about how I acquired some of my possessions. As you all should know by now, I didn't purchase my .45 caliber handgun. It was gifted to me, somewhat indirectly by a good friend. What I have not explicitly stated yet was that I didn't exactly buy my house or property either. I'm sure many of you already figured that out, though. What I'm getting at is I was placed here. 3 years ago, I was approached by an organization while I was hiding out in a bar in Mexico. I have no fucking idea how they found me, because even though I had been shit-faced for about 2 solid weeks, I know for sure no one in the area spoke English, so don't think they could have ratted me out, or that I could have ratted myself out. I fucking tried to find someone, honestly. Also, the people I was hiding from are not paranormal in any way. And there's a story I'm not certain I want to share right now, but I may share later. Also, the people I'm hiding from are not paranormal in any way. That's a story I'm not certain that I want to share right now, but I may share later on. Anyway, this group approached me and made me an offer. Again, I had been shit-faced for like 2 straight weeks, so my memory is a bit spotty. From what I can remember, though, they said something about helping me escape the problems I had created with that group. Normally, I would have immediately suspected that they were the enemy in disguise, but again, drunk-ass me thought that this was the greatest fucking thing that could have ever happened. I mean, they were offering me a free place to stay, with a limited amount of monthly allowance to purchase food and whatever else I needed. I just assumed it was government funding. Then again, the government thinks I died 12-ish years ago, I think. None of that matters now, though. See, I pretty much figured out what really happened behind the scenes with some help from Mark. We've been sharing a hospital room for the last week, so we've had plenty of time to think. I'll get to how we got here soon. I think this is going to be a long post. So as much as Mark and I can figure, the organization that was offering me witness protection type services was actually a fake front that was run by the monster hunting group that Mark works for. Their goal was to find someone with above average survival skills to see how long a human could last in an area with a high concentration of fucked up things roaming around. Let me emphasize that the assholes that planned this experiment probably didn't expect me to survive my first encounter, let alone live there for 3 years. Then, when the Keelet showed up, they got giddy. According to Mark, they'd never been able to observe a dead Keelet before. Well, before the one that I killed. He sure knows how to make me feel special. And that's when Mark and his crew got sent out, and old Mark has been here with me ever since. I think that was 4-ish weeks ago. But enough about the theory shit, let me tell you about the clusterfuck that put me and Mark in the hospital. That ghost preacher bitch that possessed Mark a while back only got about half of her facts right. I found this out when Mark and I decided to go to the home base of the local cult that lives in the back of my property. They call themselves the Chosen. I don't know what they were chosen for, but I know for sure that no one in that ragtag group of dipshits shouldn't be chosen for anything but extermination. They've tried to sacrifice me 3 different times now. The last attempt, they went as far as attempting to try and burn down my house, but I caught them in the act and convinced their leader, a short Latino man named Hector, to not bother me anymore. I really didn't want anything to do with them because they're awkward. But Mark was certain that they probably had some information about why more deadly creatures seemed to be popping up at a higher rate, or maybe at least have some knowledge about Skinny. I tried to convince him that I knew more than the Chosen when it came down to Skinny, but he insisted that I was about as observant as Helen Keller, whoever the fuck that is. So there we are, standing in front of their little shanty town they call the Ponderosa. It's mostly made up of metal sheds and parts of mobile homes. Yes, parts. And people living inside with whole walls missing. Keep in mind that these people aren't poor. Almost all the members have nice cars and trucks parked outside their homes. A new Chevy Silverado, nice Ford Mustang, many others that I don't know the names of off the top of my head. I don't really understand what philosophy leads them to living happily in a shithole like this. Each their own, I guess. We found Hector pretty quickly. He was in the middle of the squalor preaching about something or another. He noticed me and Mark almost immediately due to the fact that neither of us is wearing dark robes like the rest of the cultists. Mark was wearing black combat pants and a great long-sleeve shirt that made him look like he meant business. I, on the other hand, was wearing blue jeans and a Twizzlers t-shirt. Hector began somewhat solemnly, "I guess we have guests now," and proceeded to step down off of his upside-down 5-gallon bucket. As he approached, Mark whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "They're surrounding us." And sure enough, he was right. I look around to see not only Hector approaching us, but about 60 different cultists approaching from different directions. They were closing in, and both Mark and I prepared to draw our weapons to defend ourselves when Hector called out, "Children, calm down. Don't you see he's got a gun now? Let's please try not to get on his nerves now." I could see Mark start smirking out the corner of his eye, but I didn't have the heart to tell him that they weren't talking about him. "Look, Mr. Hector, right? We were just wondering if you had any idea about where some of the paranormal creatures in this area are coming from." The question seemed to make Hector uncomfortable. "We haven't seen anything like that around here, so..." Just then, one of the black-robed cultists came bursting through the surrounding crowd. "Grand Bishop Hector! The baby doll spider came back!" At this revelation, Hector knew that we knew that he knew what we wanted to know. All we could do was look back and forth from his distraught follower and us. He finally just decided to awkwardly smile at us. As much as Mark wanted to continue questioning, we both noticed that the cultist that came back was missing large chunks of his robe and, his flesh. While the man stood there hyperventilating in front of his leader, Mark pointed something out to me. "Cole, he's wearing a severed head," he whispered. We didn't want anyone to overhear us while all the focus was on Hector trying to console the hysterical man. I pointed to Mark's observation with, "Look, if that thing is coming, we might have to put the skinny hunt on hold. Much as these people are a nuisance, I really don't want to see a community get slaughtered." Mark shot a confused look at me. "I agree. We aren't prepared to fight with something like that." While we were talking, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Sonia, Hector's second-in-command. I hadn't seen her since the last time I was in their little neighborhood, and I hadn't really left on a good note. Now she looked deadly serious. "Cole, we have all the information you want and some that you probably don't. But before I tell you, we need your help. This thing is going to tear us to shreds, but I have a way to get rid of it." Sonia was the only member of the Chosen that struck me as a somewhat smart person. I think she was raised into the cult, and that was the reason why she hadn't left. In some twisted way, it's her only family. Before Mark could protest, I answered, "We're in. So what do we..." I was interrupted before I could finish my sentence by a loud screeching. The sound was beyond unnatural. I could describe it as a young woman screaming in terror, but the tone kept changing instantly, like a shitty auto-tune from hell. Mark and I looked to each other. Fuck. Fuck indeed, Mark. Fuck indeed. I looked back to ask Sonia what she planned on doing, but when I looked in her direction, she was already sprinting off. I really hoped that she was grabbing some sort of secret weapon and not just being a coward. I didn't have time to dwell on these thoughts, though. "There's the beast, cresting the hill," Mark said as he jerked my attention back to the situation at hand. Sure enough, as I looked through the trees that led upward, I could see a mass of tan, white, and dark red charging down the hill. As it charged closer, the cultists started running around wildly, some pulling out their spears and knives, but they looked like they were trying to use chopsticks for the first time. They weren't going to be much help. I was starting to make out some details on the thing as it approached. The main defining feature of the baby doll spider was that it was in fact made out of what looked to be baby dolls. Not just dolls, though. Mannequins, cosmetic practice heads. It seemed like all the different objects were held together by some magic stickiness. I disagree with calling it a spider, too. It had 4 legs and 2 arms. It was shaped more like a centaur. Another odd detail was that each part of its body was made up of that specific body part. Where the head should be were a massive mannequin doll and other forms of heads that were just crammed together. Same rule follows for legs and arms, torso, and so on. "Mark, what the hell is that thing?" "I don't know. Usually if you see a doll or something moving around, that's a possession. That lady you were talking to better have a good idea." The abomination was now closing in and had reached one of the outermost sheds that dotted the Chosen's headquarters and began tearing it to pieces. "I don't think guns are going to work on this thing. I bet it doesn't have internal organs that bullets could damage. And I doubt that it would respond to nat rounds since it doesn't look Native American. We're going to need to use stuff that'll break it," Mark said as he grabbed a spear from a nearby cultist and slung it at least 40 yards to hit the thing on the torso. What the fuck? Mark can throw spears now? Even though it was a solid hit, the monster didn't reel back at all. It just looked in our direction and let out another screech before charging at us at full tilt. It was at this point that I realized that the beast was not colored red anywhere on its body. All of the deep red that I had seen was just blood that was caked onto the baby doll centaur. Oh, damn it! Doll spider does sound better. As I got closer, Mark yelled, "Get its attention, I got an idea!" I nodded and pulled out my .45 pistol, knowing that it wouldn't kill it, but It could at least distract it. I now realize that I'm actually starting to trust Mark with my life. Something I hadn't done in a long time. I started hitting center mass as the creature neared 10 yards from Mark. He now stopped and turned towards me. Mark took advantage of this brief pause and sprinted at the creature. I was confused by this, until I saw the round thing in his hand, a grenade. I kept firing and Mark slid under the belly of the beast and plunged his hand in between the parts that made up the creature's torso, then continued his slide out from the other side. As he got back to his feet, he yelled, "Cover!" and dove behind a nearby Cadillac. All the creature had time to do was start looking over at Mark's direction before it was obliterated by a teeth-rattling explosion. Hundreds of body parts rained down everywhere. That may have been the most badass thing I've ever seen. It really was. It's really a good thing that Mark still carried grenades with him everywhere since the tall man incident. Cheering began erupting from all around the compound, but the celebration was short-lived. As I jogged over to check on Mark, I noticed that the body parts were still moving. Not only that, but they were all moving towards the same central point. The yells of joy started dying down as more people began to realize that the thing was just putting itself back together. And just as Mark started to grab another grenade concealed somewhere on his body, I heard a familiar voice of Sonia screaming my name. "Cole, take this! The woman that lived in the tree said that you would know what to do with it." With that, she tossed me what looked like an oversized minnow-catching net. That didn't make sense. There's no way in hell that this thing would be afraid of a net, like the pails were, even if it was bigger. All my doubts melted away when I caught the net, though. Sonia was right. I knew exactly what to do. A wave of, something came over me when my fingers made contact with the net. It was like an absolute certainty of something, but I wasn't sure of what exactly I was certain of. I looked down at the net and realized where the weights were on a normal minnow net, this one had medium-sized rocks. On these rocks were symbols or runes of some sort that I didn't recognize. They would have been hard to see on the rocks if they weren't glowing a bright blue color. Mark looked at me with a stare of confusion, then snapped back to reality and commanded, "Get your ass in gear and use that thing!" I bolted in the direction of the now half-formed doll spider, and I slung the net over the wriggling mass of body parts. Nothing happened. The body parts kept moving in place, and the net didn't seem to faze the thing. "Oh, shit," I could hear Mark say to himself from behind me. And then it hit me. It was like I remembered something that I had never learned before. Before I knew what I was doing, the word "rakulscha" erupted, escaping my mouth. All at once, blue runes changed into a deep red and smoke started rising from the net. The beast managed to get one more half of a screech in before it... Well, I guess it just kind of stopped existing. While the cheering started to erupt again amongst the cultists, I immediately approached Sonia. Something she had said when she first approached me was hanging heavily on my mind. "So, do you mind explaining why you called her the lady who lived in the trees and not the lady who lives in the trees?" I said, with more force than probably was necessary. "Look, Cole, I know what you need to know. She came to me and she explained everything. Yeah, it's our fault that some of these beasts exist, but the shapeshifter needs to be dealt with now, and you're ready to take on that task. Hector doesn't even know. She was certain that you'd be able to fix this. Please, just listen." The somber tone of the young woman's voice told me that my suspicions were true. The lady in the trees hadn't been hiding, or avoiding me this whole time. And that was really hard to swallow. This was just the beginning of a path to a dark place that I hadn't visited in years. I just hope that Mark is willing to come with me. There's more to this story. This entry is getting long, so I'm going to cut it off here and post the rest of the story at a later date. Till then, this is Cole, signing off. I just found out the one person on this godforsaken plot of land that I had considered to be on my side before Mark showed up is dead. That's right, folks. The lady in the tree wasn't mad at me, she wasn't ignoring me, she had been deceased for almost a year now. She's the one who really proved to me the means of survival over the past 3 years. She gave me a gun with magic bullets. She gave me hearing in an ear that had been destroyed. She gave me antidotes, alcohol. I'm pretty sure she even did my laundry once. I also can't help but think that she had something to do with the fact that the spirit preacher couldn't possess me. The most important thing she gave me, though, was her trust. Based on the few times she had directly communicated with me through letters, she had always alluded to the fact that I was supposed to be the one to help cleanse this land of the supposed darkness. Like I was the chosen one or some shit. Whether I'm actually special or not, though, she trusted me absolutely and failed. In her mind, I was battling these monsters and scaring them away from here. I was the hero that she had been waiting on. She couldn't fight the creatures directly due to some sort of oath. In reality, all I've done for the past 3 years was dick around and get lucky. I've never gone out looking to solve the monster problems around here. Even when I set the trap for Camo, that was purely selfish in reasoning. I was just annoyed by his constant attempts at trapping me. I didn't do it for the greater good. Looking at my life, I've really never done much to serve anyone else but myself. Even stuff I did after my dad was killed. I wasn't avenging him, I was getting revenge from me. I don't know why she ever decided that I was the one that would make things right. What instincts had told her that I was the man that could finally change something? I really wish she'd never decided on me in the first place, because that fact alone is why I typed this in my hospital bed. My throat is hurting, my lip is trembling. Actually, that might be the hospital food's fault. Not really sure at this point. Enough sad monologuing, though. Time to get back to what happened. Sonia had some explaining to do, and I fully expected to get every ounce of useful information from her. First question I needed answered was, what the hell happened to the lady in the tree? Sonia, what happened to her? She looked at the ground. It was obvious that she was dreading having to explain this to me. She snuck into what was left of my shelter in the middle of the night, after Skinny attacked the Ponderosa. She told me. At this, Mark, who seemed to materialize out of nowhere, cut her off. I understand you want to get right to the part where the tree lady died. But first, there's some other questions that need answering. Why did Skinny attack in the first place? Do you know where he came from? Do you know how to stop him? I turned to argue with Mark because I was the one who wanted to get to the part where she died, but unfortunately, Mark was right. Yeah. As much as I want to hear about what became of the lady in the tree, we need to start from the beginning. Now, what was that you were saying about some of these monsters popping up that was your fault? I guess Mark hadn't heard that part of the previous conversation, because now he looked at me with surprise etched into his face. Sonia was even slower to answer this time. Well, Cole, it wasn't my fault per se. You know how stubborn and persistent Hector can be. I didn't really like where this was going, but I had a pretty good idea. Yeah, I mean, he tried to kill me. What, 6 times, I think? Without thinking, Sonia replied, 9, but that's not what's important. What's important is that Hector has been trying to summon Cthulhu for years now. But in the last year, he's finally started having progress, somewhat. Mark chimed in. What exactly does this progress consist of? The young cultist paused for a moment, deep in thought. Well, that attempts at summoning rituals started working, just not as we planned. Things were coming through the portals we created, and things weren't what we meant to summon, though. So far, we've summoned a 15-foot-tall cloaked tentacle man that has been kidnapping our brothers and sisters on a regular basis, until recently the baby doll monster that you both saw, and the spirit that keeps creating minor inconveniences like broken plates and shoelaces being stolen from their respective shoes. But this last thing we summoned is by far the most vicious. It was the shapeshifter. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So let me get this straight. You people are responsible for the tall man, the ghost preacher bitch, the baby doll abomination, and Skinny. Was there even a point where you thought, damn, these rituals aren't really helping us out very much. Maybe we should stop? Sonia shrugged as she looked at me. This is Hector we're talking about. Well, she had a point. Hector didn't know when to quit. Mark decided to pipe up again. And what finally happened to convince you that these rituals were a bad idea? When the shapeshifter killed half of us and only stopped after saying that he was going to take a nap and come back for the rest of us later. Yeah, well, that's pretty solid reasoning, I said after considering what she said. So, was it during Skinny's nap that the lady in the tree came to talk to you? I asked. Yeah, It was a few hours after the attack. The community was absolute chaos while Hector tried to calm everyone down. I was in my shed, trying to figure out what I absolutely needed to take with me when I fled. And that's when I hear a woman whispering, "Hey," to me. It was her. I immediately knew she wasn't one of us because, well, she doesn't wear much in the way of clothes, and we're very strict about our dress code here. What did she want? This time Sonia took a deep breath and closed her eyes before answering. She said that she had a way to save us from the shapeshifter, but she had a message and a few things that she needed to leave with me. After telling me this, she went back outside for a moment, and when she came back, she was carrying 3 large nets. She explained that the nets were for the man who lived up on the hill, you, and that I was to give them to you as soon as possible. She also said that she thought of a way to keep the shapeshifter from attacking anyone again until you had a chance to deal with him. The revelation puzzled me. I knew for a fact that the lady in the tree couldn't directly attack or harm any creature as part of an oath. Mark stayed silent, deep in thought. I, on the other hand, kept on pressing Sonia for answers. So why the fuck didn't you tell me any of this sooner? This information would have been I don't know, like a year ago? Sonia flinched as I finished my sentence. Honestly, Cole, I was just scared that if you saw me, you'd want to kick the shit out of me. I guess I couldn't blame her for that one. I did kick the shit out of Hector, right in front of her a couple years ago. Okay. Did she tell you how she planned on doing this? She never got the chance. Before she could explain any further, we heard screaming along with the sound of ripping metal outside. We rushed out to see a 9-foot-tall Ronald McDonald ripping someone in half while laughing like a madman. The Native American woman looked at me one last time and said, "Make sure to tell Cole that he alone can send these beasts back using those nets. He may not know it yet, but he will know what to do when the time comes. The elder spirits will guide and protect him." With that, the Indian woman took off towards the shapeshifter, which was now a giant werewolf. As she got closer, she started screaming some words I didn't understand. She also started glowing blue, which was odd. She finally got to the shapeshifter. Just call him Skinny, it's catchier. Sonia seemed kind of annoyed that I interrupted her, but she continued all the same. She got Skinny's attention when she stopped 5 feet in front of him. She was lit up like a blue glow stick at that point. She had stopped chanting at this point and was just standing in front of Skinny, trying to catch her breath when Skinny said, "Well, aren't you different? I've never killed a glowing one before," and proceeded to casually swipe at her with a clawed hand. The Indian woman didn't even flinch. When the first claw made contact with her, there was a deafening boom, accompanied by an explosion of what looked to be a red mist. "Well, Skinny can vaporize people?" I blurted out, now a little more wary of my plans to attack the entity. Sonia was quick to set me straight, though. No, she did something to herself with those incantations. Before that point, all Skinny had done was shred people into smaller portions of people. Mark muttered in response. "Probably some curse that she set on herself as a trap so Skinny attacking her would trigger it. To bypass her rule of not being able to cause direct harm to any other creature, since in a way, Skinny cursed himself by attacking her of his own will. Did anything change about Skinny's behavior after the lady in the trees?" Mark slid his thumb across his throat in a slicing motion as he finished. He glanced over at me with what looked like pity in his eyes. What's your name?" His look of pity quickly turned to a look of annoyance. "Mark," the expert said with a growl. "Yeah, Mark. His behavior did change. See, after the Indian woman disappeared, it only took a few seconds for Skinny to regain his composure. He almost immediately started laughing, then said, 'What the hell was that? A suicide bomber attempt? Pathetic.' However, as he lunged to grab yet another person, one of my sisters, he fell to the ground in writhing agony. He got up and tried again and again, but each time he attempted to attack someone, he was met with paralyzing pain." "So the curse makes it so that Skinny can't hurt anyone," I said, apprehensively. "Because 6 months ago, Skinny smacked the dog shit out of me and I almost died." "Not quite. See, the curse has one catch. We found that out when Martin, Cthulhu bless his soul, tried to take advantage of his inability to attack and launched an assault of his own. But when the baseball bat made contact with the creature, he was immediately struck down by a clawed hand." He slapped the palm against my forehead. That makes sense. So he can only attack you if you attack first. That's why he tried to get us pissed at him. He made it seem like he was trying to lure us outside to disguise the fact that he was actually luring us into attacking him." Both Sonia and Mark looked at me, somewhat startled for a moment, before Mark spoke up. Cole, pardon me, but I'm honestly only used to you saying stupid shit. But I think you're actually right this time. I started to argue, but I quickly realized he was right. Yeah, fuck you, Mark. So do I kill or banish Skinny by tossing one of those nets on him and yelling whatever magic word comes into my head? Wait, how the actual fuck do I know what magic word to use? Sonia answered my question with, yeah, I don't really understand that either. Let's just roll with it. Just then I heard Mark say, what the fuck? Behind me. This was odd since Mark had been standing in front of me for a few minutes now. I turned around and sure enough, there was a second Mark behind me. This meant that either Skinny just walked up pretending to be Mark, or even worse, he had been talking to us the whole time and now knew everything that we knew. Sonia and I both backed away from the Marks as they stared at each other in confusion, and then back at me. The Mark on the left yelled, throw the net on it now, and now's your chance to end him. The other fired back, no, he's trying to trick you. Throw it on him, fast. After a moment of thought, I said, okay, so I think I have a way to figure this out. Whichever one of you is the real Mark just has to punch the other Mark to prove that you can attack first. Both Marks shouted, but then he'll kill me! This Sonia whispered in my ear, damn, he's good. But I had already knew what my next move was. Sonia, give me one of those nets. As she handed me one of the nets that was laying on the ground next to her, I started walking towards the Marks until I was right in front of them. A wicked grin spread across my face as I said, all right, here's a question only the real Mark would know the answer to. How did I get the tall man to run away? The Mark on the left quickly responded, you cut off a tentacle. Couldn't Skinny have seen that? I now looked to the Mark on the right to see how he planned to respond to the situation. All he did was squint his eyes and sigh. Then, in a defeated tone, he said, you took off your clothes and you ran at him naked until he fled. Satisfied by his answer, I slung the net over the top of the leftmost Mark's head and yelled out the new magic word, Ekla Hachalrika. Not really sure why the magic words that came out of my mouth were different from the ones that came out when I got rid of the baby doll monster, but like Sonia said, I guess we could just roll with it. As the runes that were carved into the rock that outlined the net started to glow red, and Skinny was swallowed up by smoke, I heard him utter, no fucking way, in a deep voice. Then, as the smoke that swallowed him was blown away by a breeze, he was gone. Pretty anticlimactic, right? I was honestly kind of hoping for some badass battle where we fought to the death and got to stab him with a magic wooden spear that was like a final gift from the lady in the tree or something while saying something cool. But in the end, Skinny was defeated by an immature inside joke. That's it. I mean, yeah, the tall man's still out there, somewhere. Skinny's done, and the lady in the tree got her wish. That's really all I could hope to accomplish. Mark was pretty pissed off at me for putting him, on the line and risking sending him to another dimension on the basis of him remembering an inside joke. In response to his anger, I just told him that I had faith. And in the end, that's all that mattered. All he said in return was, fuck you, I need a beer. I didn't tell him how I had really figured out who was the real one when they both said, but then he'll kill me, in unison. See, the new Mark that had just walked up shouldn't have known the real rules of the curse, since he hadn't been there to hear about them. All I can figure is that Skinny had probably been listening in, disguised as a cultist, and decided to end the conversation and stop us before we came up with a plan to kill him. I really just wanted Mark to believe that I was dumb enough to put his life on the line for something that Skinny could have easily heard. It had been eavesdropping by at the right time. That serves him right for basically calling me a dumbass earlier. After Skinny was dealt with, Mark and I shared an uncomfortable couple of goodbyes with the cultists, most of whom hadn't even noticed what had happened, including Hector, much less appreciated the fact that we just got rid of the single most vile creature that had ever inhabited this land, but I was okay with it. The fact the lady in the tree's killer was gone for good was enough for me. And some of you are probably asking, wait, if that's all that happened, then why were they both in the hospital? Well, that actually happened when the headquarters of the monster hunting organization that Mark works for summoned both of us to be interrogated after the events that led to the destruction of Skinny, who they knew to be an extremely high-level threat. After all the paperwork and questioning was over with, Mark offered to take me out for a drink. I accepted. Long story short, don't drink and drive, kids. They even took up our electronics for the first week we were here, claimed that it was so they could scan them, but I knew it was just punishment for damaging a company-armored SUV. Anyway, that's pretty much it for now. I'll try to keep posting, but now that Skinny's gone, Land seems a lot more relaxed. I hope you all enjoyed the tale of how I finally killed Skinny. And this is Cole, signing off. Hey there kids, and happy October. It's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I just wanted to tell you a couple things that are happening this October that haven't ever happened before. First off, if you take a look at the channel, you'll notice that I'm currently live. That's right, we started up doing a Halloween horror radio program. That means 24/7 without interruption, you'll be hearing CreepyPasta stories, read by yours truly. And as well as a few other guests that we've had on the channel before. The other thing are Halloween exclusive t-shirts. These t-shirts are available in the MrCreepyPasta link down below in the description. Actually, at any point if you want to check out the description, feel free to scroll down and see what kind of cool stuff's going on down there. Oh, and of course, the Halloween countdown starts on the 18th. Look forward to seeing you all. And sweet dreams.